Good morning, everyone. This is Luda Kopikina with GAI Insights. We're here after wonderful Thanksgiving. We hope you had a great Thanksgiving holiday and spent some quality time with your family. Today, we're bringing you some AI news, very interesting, 7 articles, and we will rate them essential, important, and optional to save you time and point you in the right directions in terms of trends and use cases that you can implement internally. We have Kevin, John, and Ankash today. Good morning again. And let's start with the first article. Ankash, please.
Sure, thanks, Luda. So the first one that we have for today comes from Alibaba. So Alibaba has released a model called QWQ32B Preview, and it is already challenging OpenAI's O1.
Yes, an interesting model trained to decline responses on political topics. What do you think about it, John?
Yeah, I was going to make the case for important on this one, and the reason being that, I think that all AI leaders need to be aware of the global duopoly between China and the U.S. right now. Obviously, there are other entrants like Mistral in France and so forth, but the power bases of the U.S. and China, and this is a full-on hot and cold war for intelligence, and I think also for adoption, because the um, there's a long-standing belief that I agree with, which is if you own the battle of ideas, you've won. And I think that what is different about this software is that it actually has ideas embedded in it. Um, every software has ideas embedded in it. This has, I would say, maybe not categorically different, but certainly relatively different levels of ideas embedded in it. And whether that's your objective function, moral code, political beliefs, of course, this article points out that if you ask this model about Taiwan, it says Taiwan is part of China. If you ask this model about Xi Jinping's, regime, it says, don't answer. And we have limitations on what our models have. I don't agree with Mr. Musk where he says, the current models are being trained with the woke mind virus. I think that's rather unscientific of our engineering friend. But, I think that this is really important, and it's important for two reasons. One is that the Chinese are competing directly with Llama and the other big open source distribution. They have massive distribution through Alibaba and other ways. The other is the performance is very good. So I would say it's important. It's a short article just to make the AI leader aware of and constantly monitoring this duopoly.
Yeah, what is your take, Kevin?
I agree with John. I think it's important and could even go for essential. It tests a few assumptions that I've had, which are probably biased by my own patriotism as a U.S. citizen. One is that China's policies, I think, have probably demotivated some of their entrepreneurs some, and therefore they would lag with AI. Another is that their censorship would hold back the models in terms of performance. And then a third would be that our policies withholding the most powerful chips from China would also hold them back in the AI race. But despite those three factors, they do seem to be producing, based on this evidence, models that are competitive. And I think we need to be aware of that. It appears that they're overcoming some of the sanctions and other things that we have in clever ways. So we need to be aware of what they're producing.
Yeah, absolutely. I also marked it as important because technically they're advancing some interesting new techniques. They're putting, as we will see in some other articles, they're putting out very clever schemes and they want to open source them. So they want to play. The question is in the global enhancements or advancements of Gen AI, and it's a question of how it's going to develop. So it's interesting for the AI leaders for sure to know about that. For Yeah. So
Yeah.
I rated it as important, not
All
catchy.
righty.
Okay.
Yeah, Michael Novak thinks this policy important as well. All righty.
Important it is. Okay, let's go next. Please, Ankash.
Okay, the next one comes from the Ellen Institute and it talks about the new model Olmo 2 that they have launched and how it is competing with some of the Llama models.
Yes, interesting. Another model.
Yeah.
Kevin, what do you think?
All right, I get excited about this and my other article too. It's the day of the SLMs, the small language models, and so this is a nonprofit group that was started by Paul Allen, who I believe is now deceased, but they're doing some very interesting things with true open source development. Meta has taken some knocks, maybe unfairly, for not being fully open source with their Llama model in terms of releasing, among other things, the actual training data. But here, this AI2 model and family of models actually does release all kinds of stuff: weights, data, code, metadata, training recipes, and all sorts of guidance about how to actually apply this stuff to data. The training data itself is vetted. It's got websites and various academic articles and so forth that are synthetic and human generated. And so these are some pretty interesting, could be a really interesting blueprint for companies that want to apply language models to their own domain specific data, which in my view is the way to really gain competitive advantage in this environment, training on your crown jewels or your assets, which is your data. And I think that by inspecting not just the model, but the training data, you can guide not just data science teams, but data teams about how to get started on this, so that data teams can take this information and say, oh, this is the type of these are the ways in which I can refine my own domain-specific data to get it ready for AI. So a lot of interesting possibilities here. And it's a short article, which is a bit of a factor. But if you go to the AI2 website, their blog has more detail and more demos and so forth. I would say I think it's essential. It's a good step forward for folks who have been wondering what the implications are of Llama not being truly open source.
Okay, well, essential. How about you, John? And Namkash, could you scroll to the performance screen where they show the competitive landscape of these small models?
Yes. Yeah, I was on the fence between important and essential. I certainly can support essential. Yeah, I think that this is I think this is huge, and the reason I think this is huge is that I really believe that the digital Second Amendment is the citizenry's ability to bear AI, and if we don't educate our populace how to use AI, I think we're going to have a real problem, because we're going to have the haves and the have-nots. It's going to be the equivalent of being literate, I think, to be able to understand how to use these robots, and to have some people know how to build them, and whether they're just creating chatbots or whatever. So I think the open source movement is in direct proportion to our liberty and freedom, and I also think it's a massive competitive issue. So I would give this essential, gladly.
Since I have the chalk, I'm not gonna go essential.
Feel the power. Feel the power, Luda.
I'm going important. The reason being, it is a trend, absolutely, and it's commoditization of this technology, in a sense, after Llama became sort of open source, right? And it's continuous, and it's very powerful trend. But is it really essential yet? I mean, it is so important. It is. So let's go next.
Kevin and I are here trying to defend.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah. So the next one is about a new company that former Android VP Hugo Barra has started. So they are creating an operating system for AI agents.
Yeah. An operating system for AI agents. We've been talking about it, and here it comes. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I think it looks super important topic, super short article, announcement by obviously a credible person who used to lead Android and a bunch of other important initiatives. But optional right now, simply an announcement. We're headed there. Glad somebody's working on it. Glad somebody good is working on it. So yeah, optional, but massively important area.
Kevin, you take optional, okay?
I think optional is, yes, I think that's fair. I think it reinforces existing trends. It's good to see that the AI community is getting more serious about educating adopters about how to make AI agents really work, and that there's some innovation taking place there. I think that AI agents are going to rely on microservices. They need to coordinate models, applications, and data, and make them all work together and keep refining them. So I'll be interested to see how these folks go about doing that.
Yeah, the other thing is that that's encouraging about this is, Mr. Singleton here, creating Android as the dominant mobile operating system, I would say, is one of the few initiatives that wasn't as complex and varied as this, or at least in the same zip code, as the complexity and variety that'll be around in the environment for the next level of agents. So I think, the good news is we have someone working on the problem who has dealt with something that is as close as the complexity that we'll face.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
That's a great point. Optional it is, though, for now, since we have a good group working on it, but they are announcing that they will work on it. So optional for now. Let's go next.
The next one is a research paper, and it talks about large language model brained GUI agents.
Yeah, Adam could not join us because he had trouble with his computer, unfortunately. But this was his, and I'll introduce it and let's discuss it. So the topic is graphical user interfaces that are LLM driven. So agents essentially for graphical user interface, and it goes through, and it's a survey of what are the techniques that are available, what are the potential gaps that researchers can focus on. I found it absolutely comprehensive, very very well thought through. Look at this. The table of contexts, and this is all in references, detailed, and the authors say that they will maintain it at GitHub. So I think that it's important to essential. I was thinking essential. What do you guys think, John? Kevin?
Yeah, I was thinking essential as well. If we go to I think it's page 66, and I skimmed this thing. I didn't read it in detail, but at the beginning of page 66, in the conclusion summary, it says the combination of LLMs and graphic user interface automation marks a transformative moment in human-computer interaction. I agree with that sentence, and some of the comprehensive, as a guy who's written papers like this, the comprehensiveness of this paper is impressive. In addition, they're going to keep it up to date. I also would point out that this is a combination of Microsoft China, Beijing University, and a couple other in the Beijing AI Institute.
Okay.
So I think that, again, the Chinese are very strategically trying to insert themselves in the software stack in a tremendously important way. And also, Microsoft is the home of dealing with unarchitected, crappy software. And when you think of, there's hundreds of millions of lines of code in your computer, and then 10,000 lines of code on the internet. Thank you, Microsoft. So this kind of kudzu, kind of boil the kudzu to make soup kind of way of dealing with software they're used to and they do a good job at. And unfortunately, I think is how it's going to, in terms of doing these complex interactions. So I think this is, yeah, Ashish is saying a replacement for RPA. I would say it's an evolution of RPA, but yes, I agree, Ashish. And, you know, I could rate this essential. I'm certainly going to send it to a couple of our clients as, hey, look, are your developers aware of this? Because it is very practical, right? You can do this now and use some of these techniques to create RPA kind of agents.
Yeah. So, two essentials. What do you think, Kevin?
I can get behind essential. I think that the natural language interface with Gen AI creates creates the need to have a fundamental rethinking of our interaction with software. And this article takes a detailed look at that and what it means to the graphical user interface, which has been a fundamental part of how we interact with software for the last few decades.
Yeah, and I think the reason we want AI leaders to know about it is, first of all, it's so comprehensive. But if they are putting together their own GUI, right, for their applications, this is where you start. You have all the references, you have all the tools surveyed. This is an amazing step forward when you're thinking about your own project. So yeah, okay, essential it is.
Yes, great.
Let's go next.
Okay. The next one comes from Fortune, and it talks about the new land graph for AI companies, which is military contracts.
Yes, AI companies going for military contracts. That's amazing. What do you think about this, John?
Yeah, look, it's a lovely, it's a well-written article with Fortune. You know, it's nice to see a little bit of actual journalism, still alive, not completely dead. Not the Joe Roganization of everything. Anyway, but I would say this is definitely optional. It's obvious. I do think it's an interesting notion that Silicon Valley has shifted right. I don't know when they ever weren't right. When you look at the relationship, we wouldn't have Silicon Valley without the military-industrial complex, right? I mean, pick your poison: DARPA, the internet, transistor, GPS. So I think it's a little bit naive in the sense that they say that Silicon Valley shifted right. I mean, yeah, maybe Andreessen and Peter Thiel is now authoritarian. That's a little. I don't think of that as conservative. I think it was a new kind of radical, but whatever. But obvious option.
Okay, yeah. Kevin, what do you think?
Yes, it reinforces very important trends in itself. It's not new. I haven't had the chance to look through this in great detail. It's worth noting that the U.S. government has some big changes to make to how it operates from a defense perspective, and incorporating the best AI expertise into that, and reducing their dependence on Leviathan slow-moving companies is important. So I think it's an important trend, but yes, we do know it's underway. So optional is fine.
Okay, yeah, it's interesting. It's certainly the need of money, but the government. We've been reviewing articles all along that the government is putting together teams, really pushing the integration of the new tech, and now they have the best brains working for them. So this is actually a good trend. So, but optional. Okay, optional it is. Let's go next.
Okay, the next one is about small VLM. So it's a small vision language model from Hugging Face.
Yes, Kevin, what do you think?
Good. This echoes themes of the prior article that I talked about from AI2. This is a critical trend for critical reasons. It underscores the rise of small language models that, because they have fewer parameters, require less power, less data for training or fine tuning, fewer GPU cycles, less memory, and this also involves sharing the training data, which I think, for the reasons I described earlier, is really a critical leg up for data teams that are trying to figure out how to support data science initiatives in their organizations. It'll be interesting to see what, if any, impact this has on Meta. I like the idea of having a vision language model where you're responding to an image or video and describing what's there. That's an important step as we look towards a multimodal interaction between humans and Gen AI models. It does look like this is they're providing extensive training and fine-tuning guidance, which again is helpful for the AI adopters. So for those reasons, I'd say it's important reading. It could be a big step forward for companies that want to apply Gen AI language models to their own domain-specific data in order to gain competitive advantage.
Okay, well, thank you. John, what's your take?
I think it's important for all the reasons that Kevin just laid out.
All right.
Okay.
Important, but you know what? If we put AI2 is important as well. Okay, important it is. This is interesting.
The AI2 is essential, but our dictator.
Yeah, that's right.
A dictator didn't agree. I see. Well, maybe the dictator can be made to change her mind.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Ankash, if you can scroll down to the performance, to the little, I think maybe it's above.
There you go. Performance.
There we go.
Yeah. So the model is not yet, the top performing, but they made it working on the edge, right? So the question is, what is enough performance-wise and throughput-wise to be on the edge with the context window? So they pushed the boundary on that, and for that reason, I thought it was really important. Okay, all right, let's go next. Important it is.
Okay, the last one that we have for today comes from AWS, and it talks about a use case of using LLMs to fortify cyber defenses.
Yeah, important, certainly very important topic. And the use case is very interesting. They talk about how you take the model just off any model and use it for cybersecurity. And they built the environment and put it together and answered the three questions. Can it summarize what's happening, right? Can it create the questions from the natural response? Can it, right? Let's see. Can it create the questions, SQL query generation from natural language, the incident severity prediction, and the incident summarization. So what they found that on the SQL query generation, it did very well. It didn't do so well on the severity prediction, and did quite well on incident summarization. So I thought it was an important articles for leaders that have to be aware what's happening on the security side and what can you use and the like. So I put it as important. John, Kevin, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm not that familiar with all the competitive models on this, so I don't know kind of where I was between optional and important, but excuse me, I just don't know how much of a contribution this is compared to other tools to analyze and summarize.
Kevin, what do you think?
I think important. I have to say hats off again to AWS. They produce the meatiest case studies of vendors I've seen in this space or others, which is great. And if folks listening want to prove me wrong and find other really meaty use cases from vendors, I'd love to see them. We've done surveys on popular use cases for AI, and Gen AI. Security was number 2. So it was very high. And I think that this is probably essential reading for a CISO, because it can provide guidance about how others are addressing this, but important for the rest. And I am hearing more from startups lately who are getting funding to address security and using Gen AI models to support that.
Yeah, I do love the confusion matrix, figure 1. If you go down to that on Coach, a little farther down. I think it's farther down, farther. Keep going. right there.
This
You know,
one.
in terms of informational versus critical, what's been the accuracy and how it goes across. I kind of like that. How
Yeah.
much do you think? And along which dimensions? I think that what I like is it's an evolution of the benchmark idea. When you think about benchmark, it's one dimension. You have an array of one-dimensional comparisons. I like the multi-dimensional comparison here as a way to visualize it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And I was just going to add that the obvious caveat with AWS case studies is that while they're meaty and everything else, they often focus exclusively on AWS environments, which oftentimes is not a realistic environment for many organizations that are hybrid and or multi-cloud.
yeah, and Michael notes that in reality, you will also be looking at several different
Yeah.
LLMs, not one. But regardless, I think it goes through, here's the problem, here's the environment, this is what we did. And some of the wisdom in this is what we did and this is what we found is, I think, useful. So, okay with important, or should we put it as optional, guys?
I'd say important.
Important?
All
John?
right. Yep, I'm fine with that.
Important it is. All right. Okay, so important it is. Let's put the scorecard up. I think we have
A lot of reads today.
four importance.
Coming right up, Luda.
Yeah,
Or
so we have one essential, four importance, and the rest optional. We are on the important and essential streak here.
Michael's saying optional on the last one, whatever. Fine, Michael. We're living under a dictatorship. What can I tell you?
It offers clarity.
Yes.
It offers clarity.
Yes.
Okay, this is it for today. Thank you very much. Thanks, John. Thanks, Kevin. Sorry,
Thank you.
overruling you, but
Thanks.
maybe
Thanks.
tomorrow will be a better day.
Great
See you
chat.
tomorrow.
Bye-bye
Thanks,
now.
Kevin, for joining. This is
Okay.
wonderful to see you.
Thank you. Likewise.